All right, everybody, welcome back to the What You Don't Hear podcast, 15-minute Friday edition. I am sitting here once again with my good friend, Josh Emerick. Josh, welcome back.
Hey there.
Hey there. You're hearing it. You know that he's ready. You know that we are ready to just spout things off for another 15 minutes straight. Hopefully to help you wrap up your week on this glorious Friday with some positive and actionable advice and opinions like we always like to share. This one, I think is a pretty good topic, if I do say so myself. And I think something that a lot of people, of course, in the creative and business world, right? But as human beings, as we kind of always say, this advice can kind of go to anybody, right? And this doesn't come from a place, again, that we think we're geniuses. We don't think we know it all. This is honestly, for sure, this episode of 15-Minute Fridays is for sure coming from a place of we have made all of these mistakes and we have lived through these sometimes very, very awful situations.
Yeah, but they've always made us better.
And they've always made us better because this week we are talking about conflict and how to properly respond to said conflict in all the different forms that it comes with and how to really answer it with solutions. So I'm going to start 15 minutes on the clock right now, and we are going to jump into it. So, Josh, what I want from you from the start is let's kind of explain like what we mean by like when we say conflict, right? Like what are we talking about when we say that?
Well, everyone experiences conflict in life. And the thing is, there are certain things that are just annoyances, and there are certain things that are actually worth working through. So a lot of it is dividing up like, is this worth my energy? And how much of it is worth it? And that's kind of how you decide how you're going to really work through that energy. Avoidance is the easiest thing with conflict.
Right.
No one likes to be in conflict unless you just love drama. And realistically, no one likes like a real argument. But arguments can be productive, especially if both sides are heard, especially if you set the tonality of what you really want and why you're even addressing it. So I think, if I'm just criticizing you, I'm not going to get any real response back because you're going to go defensive. So a lot of it for me is setting the tone of why we're addressing the conflict. That's kind of where it starts.
Right.
Listen, there's an issue at hand and I want to work through this because I appreciate you or I value you or I value the relationship we have and what the future can be.
Yes.
So in starting with conflict, it's really important to address that like this is only about us getting better together. Because we care about this. If you care about the person you're working with or, whether that be client, whether that be an employee, whatever, it's like, is it worth tearing this person down? Is it worth just being pissed off at them and never working with them again? I don't want to not work with someone who adds a ton of value just because they do one thing that pisses me off. So that deserves energy in solving this problem.
Yeah. And I think when you determine what is a true conflict and what is just kind of a small problem that can relatively be easily fixed, and you determine how much energy you're giving into something, that's kind of how you figure out whether this is a real conflict that really needs addressed, or is this just something small that I can address and we can kind of get through and it's fine. Because there are differences in those things, right? And identifying that is a pretty big thing. But, of course, with this, we're going to talk more specifically in the conflict of business and creative, right? So this is the classic, if a creative is listening to this, you've probably been through it, right? You've got that awful round of revisions coming through for your project, or the client spouts back and they're like, they want scenes that you didn't even shoot that day, or they want photos that you didn't even take, or they're for some reason demanding a price change, or whatever it is, they're working on the defense, right? So let's talk in specifics of how to navigate those types of conflicts because we have both been there.
Yeah, and something you said is like they're working in the defense. So are we. Ultimately we all want to do good work. So it's like when something's being criticized, we all pull our guard up just a little bit.
Totally,
we get a little defensive.
Yeah,
as an editor, you're like, this is a good freaking edit. How dare you have revisions?
It's the classic.
But for them, they're seeing it differently.
Yeah, it's the classic artist subjective thing.
Yeah. So again, we need to kind of scale it back, not be defensive, not be emotionally charged, and just look at it of like, let's be in their shoes.
Which is hard. Totally is.
Let's listen to what they're saying and understand what it is. Let's acknowledge their concerns. This is the latte. Tell them what we're going to do. Thank them, for opening and giving this information, this feedback, and then explain what went wrong.
And
That's
so re-explain that latte thing real quick, because you were explaining it and then you said latte, and I have actually never heard that. So this is even fresh to me. So
what is that? Is that acronyms or whatever where it breaks down?
Yeah, so where each letter is a... Yeah.
L is listen.
Okay.
So if we're having a conversation, I need to hear what you're saying. So the first part is just listening. Maybe that's reading.
Yeah.
So revisions. Read. Comprehend what they're saying. When you're responding, acknowledge what they said, that they were heard. Then tell them what you're going to do. Thank them for the feedback. And explain where something went wrong, if something did go wrong.
Right. And that is LATTE, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's a good, easy,
I feel
basic
like
thing.
I feel like that's a cool structure to put behind how to handle a conflict.
Well, we get emotionally charged.
Yeah.
The listening part is where it slows you down a little bit.
Yeah.
So you can actually hear, and it makes people feel appreciated. So let's break down maybe some specific examples.
Yeah, let's get into it.
We've had projects in the past where, a crew member has messed up a responsibility. So then I need to ask myself, what level of energy does this take? If they messed up something that was really big and crucial, like a whole scene, or, like lighting wasn't safe and someone. So to me, safety is super crucial.
Yeah.
Ensuring the client's project is complete.
Yeah.
We try to create a culture that you can be open and honest. I want people to feel like they can talk to me. If they fuck up, I want them to be able to come to me, and I'm going to take that.
Everybody has different duties, but there's no totem pole.
Yes. And if someone on my team fucks up, it's not all on them. It's on us as a group. But I'm going to take the brunt of that. So when someone works with us, I want them to feel very comfortable about, this could have been better. This got messed up. Can we please do it again?
Yeah.
And I think in the creative culture, that's not very welcome. A lot of people feel like they can't be vulnerable. They got to be perfect.
Yeah, you can't mess up.
For me, it's slowing down and being like, we all want the best thing. And sometimes that takes just slowing down and starting over. Obviously we don't want to waste too much time. But if an issue comes up, do I want to not address that and let it fester, and then on another project and it happens again, and then on another project and it happens again? I'll speak from personal experience, and you know this. There are certain crew members that's things happen multiple times, and now it's not one issue. It's that's happened 7 times, and I'm bringing it up on the 7th time, pissed off.
Right.
That's not beneficial for anyone. It makes me look stupid. It makes me look like a bad leader, and it hurts their feelings.
Right.
Why it hurts their feelings is they've been making this mistake for 7 times, and I haven't told them because I'm scared of conflict and them feeling bad. No one wants to feel bad, but if you come at it of listen, we all want the best. We all want to do good work. There's something that you've been doing that I need you to change for you to continue working. This is simple. It's an easy fix.
Right.
Can we change this?
Right.
That's a 40-second conversation. Yeah. And yes, it might be a little awkward, but they're not going to make that mistake, and they're going to appreciate it.
Right. And at the end, conflict resolved, right?
Exactly. It's easy to avoid it. Yeah. But then that builds up. You're pushing it down.
Exactly.
And then it blows up in a really unhealthy, toxic way.
It's kind of like the slingshot mentality, right? You can, if you're avoiding a problem, you're avoiding conflict, right? Realistically, you're just pulling that back and building the tension, and then at some point, it's going to take off and it's going to explode. So we've talked a little bit from the crew side, right? Let's switch gears a little bit to probably the tons of creatives. If any of them are listening to this and have had these issues, something that tons of creatives have come across is that awful client, right? That dreadful client that they're throwing in all these revisions, or they're, again, like I said earlier, they're demanding things that you didn't even do, or they're trying to get out of pay, or they're trying to, in a sense, let's be honest, they're trying to screw you over a little bit, right? Let's say if we're coming at it from that mentality. Let's talk on that and how we handle those conflicts, because those are major ones that I feel like a lot of creatives and a lot of business people and just people in general, you don't have to be creative, but those are the conflicts. How do you handle things like that?
Well, it sucks because your brand's integrity or your personal integrity is being attacked. So it hurts. It hurts the ego really bad. It's never fun when someone points out something you're doing really awful. And when it's on the client side, they're paying you, so you feel obligated to do a good job. And you feel kind of like you got to be spineless. I got to bend over and do whatever they say.
It's the customer is always right mentality, right?
And guess what? There's always wrongs in both sides. And sometimes clients need to be better.
Yeah.
But it's not as simple as saying, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. That's being defensive.
Yeah.
So we need to acknowledge, where did we go wrong? For us, I think it's always like looking at bigger picture. Why? Again, listening.
Yeah.
Why are they expressing this concern? Is it really a concern, or is there maybe something else that they're concerned with? Sometimes we've had people bring up shots and they haven't even seen the first edit.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can react to that right then and there, or you can simply say, we haven't even got the first edit. This shot that you're talking about wasn't actually shot or accounted for. Mm-hmm. So I'm just being direct with you right now that that's not going to be possible.
Don't avoid it and pull back the slingshot even more.
You're hiding from something there.
Right.
Like, let's just be direct.
Yeah.
But it's like, we also haven't even got to the first edit. So, like, let's see that. Like, this shot doesn't exist. And one, like, I don't think it needs to exist. Mm-hmm. If we really have to do it, then I guess, depending on the integrity of what you want for the project, you can make that decision. This is a you thing to figure out.
Right.
But it's like, address it. And then, like, just slow it down. Like, we got to get to this checkpoint. Yeah. We're not even to that checkpoint yet. Right. And we're making a bunch of revisions. But also, for us in an editing revisions in that exact scenario, so often we always tell people they're going to direct revisions or any of those questions to you, mm-hmm. because I'm usually handling the edit, and I do get emotionally charged when I see a bunch of revisions because I interpret them differently. So they come through you and then you take them to me. So I'm managing like how I react to that just by going through that filter system.
Right.
It's how we keep things moving.
Right. And so what about the clients that, you agree to a certain price, right? And then all of a sudden they don't think your value is that, right? They don't think that they should have to pay for that. How do we handle those conflicts? Because those are also conversations that we have had to have in the past.
Well, it's usually not that simple.
Yeah.
Usually it's a scheduling thing. It's unrealistic expectations. And we've had times where we've had a lot of meetings, but I think it's been on us in the terms of like we didn't communicate direct enough for them. Mm-hmm. So it's like now we have a problem later on down the line that sucks. Yeah. And for me, it's acknowledging, listen, we made a couple of mistakes, and now you have this expectation that's not realistic. Mm-hmm. So you need to get your expectation realistic, but we should have slowed it down and explained this a little bit better. So I'm sorry that I didn't do this, but here's how we're going to do this moving forward. So explaining how we're going to fix this moving forward. Is that decision going to work for you or not?
Right.
Because if it needs to change, then we get into some weeds that aren't in a contract.
Right.
And it's like, do we want to draw up a new contract, or do we want to fulfill this one? Because this one explains this. Like, you paid for 1 day of production. We've already done 2 additional ones. I don't know how I can be more flexible for you.
Right.
This all comes down to brand integrity. We know a lot of creatives who are like, it's in the contract. I'm going by the contract. I'm a dickhead, and this is how this is going to be. Yeah. Sorry, I'm opinionated here. Yeah. But the thing is like I have my own personal flavor of taking care of things, mm-hmm. and I like to remain flexible. I like to be fun to work with, and I like the experience to be good.
Yeah.
So my brand is that. I will be flexible on a production date as long as it doesn't fuck my crew, mm-hmm. and as long as it doesn't hurt my company. I want to build a healthy business, and a healthy business attracts future work and future freelancers.
And also attracts the right clients.
Yeah. This is such a tricky thing because it really does all come down to just explaining everything, mm-hmm. and being upfront about everything. It's really easy to avoid conflict.
Right.
But the ultimate thing is when we say this, clients, sure, we've been in a scenario like this where they've been pissed, but then I'm just really honest of like, listen, we made a couple of mistakes. You made a couple of mistakes. Here's all of them. Mm-hmm. Here's how we fix this. How do we want to take care of this? We give options. I'm not just saying, here's the only solution.
And I think just to kind of like add to what you're saying a little bit, or reshape it in a little bit of a different light so people understand kind of what we're saying, is, let's say a client is hitting us up and they're having all these issues, right? When you're saying, hey, you know what? We made some mistakes. You made some mistakes. Let's, we can agree to disagree, but we're also just going to find the solution. I think even when you're saying that it's okay to admit, like, we've made some mistakes, I've made some mistakes in this process, that mistake could realistically be just something as simple as not having clear expectations set for what the client can expect.
Getting a little too eager and jumping in early.
Yes, because I
that's
think,
a lot of the times the case.
Yeah, because I think, sometimes if you frame it as like, we've made some mistakes, well, then somebody could hear that and be like, well, if you messed up, if you if you set up the wrong lights and you didn't roll a credit, then of course you made a mistake. But I think
most commonly it's usually scheduling.
Right.
That's where like we try to make a really hyper clear schedule, and then we see people get off schedule, and we still are flexible around that. And
Right.
then they're like, well, why didn't we get X, Y, and extra things? X, Y,
Right.
and Z extra things.
Right.
It's like,
right.
well, X, Y, and Z extra things were in the schedule, and you changed the schedule.
Right.
We remained flexible, and we added another production date, or we crammed in even more time, or I threw more crew last minute at this to make it happen.
Right.
And I remained flexible, but I didn't sit down and say, listen, I'm spending an additional $700, $1,000, $2,000, whatever dollars to solve your problem that you threw on us.
Yes.
And I just take the brunt of it, and then it becomes an issue, and I'm like, actually, I addressed your issue. I just didn't tell you because I didn't feel like telling you. I
Right.
just wanted to solve your problem.
Right.
That's
And
where
so-
we ran into the biggest problems.
And in the end, that's when
and they
you
keep
can,
asking for
yes.
more.
And so that's when you can kind of
I got to
admit,
draw a line now of like, well, you're asking too much.
Right.
I've
right.
already given you more than what you asked because your expectations weren't the same as what mine was.
Yeah, and so it doesn't have to be when you're holding yourself accountable in a conflict, right? Because you got to look at it from both sides. I think that's more so of what you're saying. It doesn't have to be like, well, what all did I fuck up on the shoot? Mm-hmm. It's not that. It's your part of the thing that you quote unquote messed up or the mistake that you made. Literally could have been just not being direct enough with the client of saying, no, we're not going to do that, and here's why. Or yes, we're doing things this way, and here's why. Or here's how the schedule is. Just to kind of clear that up, so not I don't want anybody to sit and be like,
communication's a big thing. I know, I can use some different examples of in the past where we've been on production and there's been just like technical issues, mm-hmm. whether that be with lighting, whether that be with camera, whether that be with media, and that adds time. And then people feel like we're sitting around. Right. And I get so stuck in, I have this technical problem. I'm talking with my team. Because when we're on production, I'm so focused on our team.
Yeah.
That's where I get.
Yeah.
I'm just like, lighting team do this, lighting team do that, blah, 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 blah. Like, take care of these sort of things.
Right.
What happens, though, is like, I'm solving all kinds of problems, but I'm not relaying it to the client of like, there's a bunch of problems, but we're taking care of them. That's as simple as that is.
Yes.
And then it turns into something of like, we sat around for 3 hours and nothing happened. I'm like, oh, we did, but a lot was happening.
We didn't, but yes. And so that, to kind of sum that up, a lot of how to handle conflict can be answer problems with solutions, mm-hmm. not more problems. Whether that's an argument or a conversation.
When those problems are being solved and how they're being solved.
Right. Just address that, because you don't have to, when we're saying like address the issues, right? It doesn't have to be, yes, we have a problem. I disagree with you. I think you're wrong and I'm right, blah, blah, blah. Addressing it can be, I see that there's a problem. This is either what I already did to fix that problem and you're just now finding out about it, or here's, we're addressing the problem. Here's what I think we can do to go ahead and solve this.
Do you agree?
Do you agree? And can we just move forward to continue to solve the problem? Mm-hmm. Right? So I think we've broken through our 15 minutes, right? Here on another 15-minute Friday. So I think to kind of sum everything up, a big thing with handling conflict is to try and see both sides, mm-hmm. understand how you can hold yourself accountable, as a creative or as a business owner or as a person, right? Because I think that's, again, the easy thing to look at conflict and immediately say, this is a conflict. That person, the opposing force to me, they are wrong.
Yeah, not being right. Emotionally charged. Defensive, right. Emotionally charged.
And it's easy. It's I know somebody's going to listen to this and be like, well, you can say get rid of your emotions, but that's not that easy. Trust me.
We're always a little bit right and a little bit wrong.
Right. There's always something different. And like I said, when I sit and say, hold yourself accountable for the mistakes you've made, that doesn't have to mean you completely messed something up and you really, really made a big mistake. It can be the tiniest thing that set off a chain of events, like that tiny thing being you didn't clearly communicate with the client and set expectations and boundaries even on what they can expect and what you expect. That could be your tiny mistake that pulled the slingshot back a little bit more, and then it was never brought up, and now you're at the explosive point where everything's boiling over, and now it's an argument.
And you've been thinking about it too.
Yes. So again, we've totally been in situations where our immediate reaction is very emotional, right? We are insanely defeated. We are insanely broken by something that somebody says, right? When they say that we're wrong or that our art is not good enough for their expectations, right? It's easy to get connected to that so much and be like, this is awful. This is the most defeating thing. This is a failure. But you can also look at it in the form of, how do we resolve this conflict? Right? Let's try to not get attached to it. Take some time, of course, accept it, whatever.
And think about what you want out of that relationship, whether this be an employee or whether this be a client. Do you want to continue to work with this person?
Right. And either way, whether you do or not, even if you're like, I never care if I work with this person again, still just resolve it in the most positive way you can. Send them on their way. Of course, explain maybe where they were wrong, but also hold yourself accountable too. So the clarity is out there and it's completely resolved. And then cool, you can wash your hands of it and you don't have to work together again. But
I
either
think it's
way,
even important to say that though. If we're being really honest, I think it's important that if they messed it up in such a degree that it's like, we're never going to work together again. I'm going to resolve this, but I'm not going to work with you again because our values don't align, or our this vibe is just not going to work. I don't think it's good for us, because I'm not saying that this person is terrible, but different people align different ways. The type of people we employ aren't the same as everyone. Each company has a different culture.
Right.
So that's how this even fits in, is like, that's even a bigger piece of learning to work through conflict.
Yeah.
You start to figure out those personality types and like, do I want to work with that personality type again? Because not every company is meant to work with everyone.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. So all in all, to kind of sum everything up, I think it's when you are facing conflict, that's the first step. Face it. Don't avoid it, right? Don't keep pulling it back and letting it explode. Just face it head on, take care of it, and answer a problem with a solution, right? Offer up a solution, whether it's closing the deal completely or moving forward in some progressive way. Figure those things out. But the biggest thing is, I think when you're handling any sort of conflict, it is know that you also need to hold yourself accountable. And I think if I can add in this one last thing right before we say goodbye, I'm just going to say, and Josh, I just want to real quick, you can either say yes or no and back me on this. I'm just going to put you in the hot seat real quick because I'm telling the people goodbye right after this. This is the one thing I'll say. I think as creatives, you got to hold yourself accountable, right? Answer the conflict, answer the problems with solutions, be solution mind oriented, right? But I will say that I do not think the classic line of the customer is always right. I think that's kind of bullshit.
I think it's kind of bullshit too. And the only thing else I'll add is pat yourself on the back every time you work through one of these conflicts. Makes you better.
Yep, it's growth. So that is the point of this podcast, is to share growth and advice and opinions and to make you grow in some way. So hopefully this sends you into your weekend with some sort of positivity, some sort of positive energy, right? We're talking about some negative things on this episode, but with a positive light always shed on them. So I think that does it for another 15-Minute Friday. We've definitely broken our 15-minute barrier again, but it's always for good reason. So I'm going to take it on this one. You can follow me at Who's Ross Theisen. That's Theisen for Tyson. Follow me around the internet. Chat with me about whatever you want. You can follow Josh at Emerick on the internet. You can chat with him about any of this sort of stuff. Hey, you know what? If you want to start a conflict and really put everything Josh said to the test on this episode, hit him up in his DMs and start a conflict with him. Start a big argument with him and just see what happens. You can really see if he believes everything he said on this episode. Is that fair?
Yeah. Put my money where my mouth is or something like that. I'll probably mess that up.
Exactly. Actually, just threaten his money, folks. Tell him that he owes you money and let's just see how he handles conflict. But that'll do it for another 15-Minute Friday. Follow us everywhere at WYDH Pod. We'll see you next time. Bye.